to the organism. So the process, you know, is selective refinement, right? Selective mutation. So in the Darwinistic model, it's a small mutation happens, and then that provides great advantage so that those cells or whatever that have that, then they survive and the other ones die, right? That's the whole basic thing. But in this case, if you didn't have all three of those components, and there's 8 or 9 rods, and there's several linkers, 7 or 8 linkers, and this protein that makes it wave, if you don't have all of those coming together at the same time, then it's not any help, and in fact it's a detriment to the cell. Not to mention, of course, that it needs to be growing out of the cell and not into the cell. So all of these probabilistic problems that you have there. So this is what's called irreducible complexity. So there is a level to which that if you make it any simpler, it just won't work. So take a mouse trap. So Behe uses this concept of a mouse trap all the time. So it's composed of just a few items. There's a block of wood. There is this metal wire thing that goes like that. There's a spring that snaps it. There's this catch mechanism that you hold it back with. And then there's the trigger, right? And these all have to be put together. So if you take one piece out, it doesn't work, right? So if you don't have the spring, the mouse steps on it and it just stays there. If you don't have the thing that flaps, take out any piece and this mouse trap won't work. It's no better than a glob of wood. You get no benefit. In fact, there's detriment. So this concept of irreducible complexity comes in with every single little piece of a cell. You have cilia, you have flagella, which are even more extremely complex. It was interesting, he was talking about the flagellum on some of these bacteria, and those things will spin at 10,000 RPM. So it's faster than, most high-tech motors that we have. It's a motor that's more complex, and in a single turn, in a single less than one rotation, it can immediately flip and go the other way. I mean, it's at the same speed. It has the capability of doing stuff that just blows away all of the engineering that we've done. There's been no device that humans have manufactured that even come close to that. And this is like this little flagella. This is like this trivial little thing, and it looks like it's nothing, but it's so complex that you take out one little part and it doesn't work. And all of the cell and all of its little tiny pieces within it are that way. There's this irreducible complexity so that you can't just add like little increments. In fact, you have to have huge additions of very complex mechanisms added at the same time. An eyeball is another great example of that. If you think about it, eyeballs are pretty complex, but they have basic things. You need a nerve that goes back to the brain so you can process something with it. You need an optic nerve, you need rods and cones inside the back of the eyeball, and you need a lens. You take any of those things out, and now what you've got is this highly sensitive glob in the front of you that is not only not helpful because you can't see with it, but is really dangerous and detrimental because if you get poked in there, it's like really sensitive And you know, if you're talking about Darwinistic evolution, you know, you're going to go down because all somebody'd have to do is poke you in that really sensitive thing and you're going to die. You know, you'll give up in the fight. So all of these things, and I mean, he just goes through, there's blood clotting. Blood clotting is extremely complex, and I won't go into all of the details of that. But the point is that inside of our bodies and inside of any cell, even the simplest one, is these hugely complex mechanisms that when you compare to a painting on the side of a wall, make that look like it would be easy for that thing to just, you know, happen at random. If you compare that to the extremely complex mechanisms that have to spring into existence in a very trivial and most simple cell. So they're made up of complex parts. A system would not work without any one of them, and there is no stepwise assembly mechanism that exists. They don't know how they came together. They don't know how it could have gotten that way because there is no path of this incremental improvement. It all just, boom, had to be there and working. You know, so that's, it's not just small steps forward. So the last one that I'm going to talk about here is evidences of biological information. And there's tons of other things that I could talk about, but I just didn't want to take more time. But I refer you to this book, and there's about 5 or 6 others that I could get you that are, if you want to do some investigation. This one here is particularly, I think, a good read. It's pretty easy to understand. There's parts in there that I had to read about, like, what? Read 5 times. I was like, I don't understand that. So there's a few technical areas. It was like, ah. But anyhow, so this last one here is evidences of biological information. So the concept of information theory in DNA. So DNA contains more information than the Encyclopedia Britannica, okay? And it's more complex and holds much more detailed things. So, let me ask you this. If a set of Encyclopedia Britannica suddenly came out of space and landed on Earth, would you say, oh, wow, what random mutations happened up in space over time to create that and land it here? No, it's just impossibly complex. You know, it goes above that level of this could have happened at random. In fact, if you look at SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, founded by Carl Sagan, I believe, and you know, basically they've got the big telescopes and listening things are searching for extraterrestrial life. And so they're searching for information coming back, and they're looking for something that is complex, non-repeating, and non-predictable. That is the definition of information, okay? Because at first they saw quasars, so they go at a regular pace. Boop, boop, boop. And I talked about those before, kind of like the lighthouse kind of thing. They're spinning, and you get it once every time it spins. But so that at first they had the boop, boop, boop. Oh, is that intelligent life? You know, got all excited. No, okay, that's because it doesn't meet the criteria. It's not complex, it is repeating, and it's very predictable. Okay? So that doesn't meet the basic requirements of intelligent life. So if the definition of information is the fact that it's complex, non-repeating, and non-predictable, then if you look at DNA, it meets all of those requirements. It's highly complex. It does not